votes to fund the government, despite the fact that Democrats' key priorities, already agreed to by the Speaker, that those priorities were ultimately tossed out. But the rebellion that Elon Musk fomented among House Republicans, that rebellion is not over. 1 week from today, House Republicans will have to vote on who they want to be the next Speaker in the next Congress. House Republicans have already proven themselves quite adept at devolving into a protracted speakership fight. Remember that in January of 2023, 2 years ago, it took them 5 days and 15 votes to finally elect a speaker, Kevin McCarthy. But this time, the stakes are even higher and the majority is even narrower. If Republicans do not choose a speaker within 3 days of this new Congress, they may not be able to certify the election results on January 6th. You heard that correctly. We may be barreling toward another January 6th election certification debacle, only this time it's about whether Republicans can get over the infighting in their own conference to certify a member of their own party as President of the United States. I mean, it's one way to kick off 2025. Happy New Year. Joining us now are Bulwark podcast co-host Tim Miller and Washington Post national columnist Philip Baum. Thank you guys both for being here. I mean, let me just survey both of you. Philip, Tim, who here believes that we're going to have a speaker on January 6th? I'll start with you, Philip.
Oh, yeah. I was already raised my hand. Yeah, I mean, look, Republicans in Congress are focused on one thing, and that's keeping Donald Trump happy. And nothing is going to frustrate Donald Trump more than if anything happens to delay his becoming president. I am entirely confident, even if it is on some sort of ad hoc, cobbled together, you get to be speaker for the next 48 hours thing, like some sort of condition to it. I mean, look, they put a condition on Kevin McCarthy's speakership. They ended up having him booted. They are very adept at coming up with a temporary solution. And I am 100% confident that no one wants to be the one that made it so that Donald Trump's January 6th didn't go exactly the way he hoped the last one did.
100% confidence from Philip Baum. This program is live, but it will be available on tape. I just want to put it out there.
That's fair. Tim, I'll stand by it.
Okay. Listen, I applaud the confidence. Tim, sure. Do you think that Republicans will prove themselves adept at making sure Donald Trump can certify his election results?
I don't know if I'd use the word adept, but I think that they will stumble into it. I'm with Philip, maybe 97%. I'm going to hedge by 3%. But look, the other option, though, you have to consider is maybe Kamala Harris will have the courage. Right, that's just a joke to intervene. But look, these guys, Mike Johnson is a dead man walking, politically speaking. He, I think, will probably survive the January 3rd vote because it's hard to beat somebody with nobody. But he is managing a majority that is much smaller than the one that Kevin McCarthy couldn't manage. He's already proven incapable of managing it with Trump not even in the presidency yet. And we have a debt ceiling fight coming in mid-January. They've only kicked the can for 3 months on government funding. That comes in March. There's going to be a huge fight over extending the Trump tax cuts that there is disagreement about within the conference. We already saw just this week, Christmas week, they're all fighting over immigration, Elon Musk versus the nativists. The idea that Mike Johnson is capable of navigating this is, I think, preposterous. So Mike Johnson's time is coming. I don't think it'll be January 6th.
I mean, the idea that anybody is able to navigate this seems... I'm not saying that Mike Johnson is necessarily one of the great, speakers of all times, but it's just such an impossible position to find yourself in when you have a hard right president with a hard right agenda. And the only way, Philip, you know this well, the only way things get passed in the House is if Democrats bail Republicans out. And I guess my question is, does the new reality that Democrats aren't going to be sort of staving off crisis for a Democratic president the way they have been in the Biden years, but it'll be Trump that's holding the bag? That, to me, suggests that Democrats may be less inclined to deal make and save Republican butts when, the rubber hits the road. And I kind of wonder what your expectations are for much getting done in the next Congress, even if Donald Trump, is the puppet master of the House Republican Conference.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the idea that a whole lot's going to pass in Congress is you're right. I think that's probably incorrect. I think, too, the Democrats will probably give them plenty of rope with which to hang themselves. Like, it seems very obvious that they're going to be more than willing to let the Republicans step on their toes for a while before they actually come and bail them out. But at the end of the day, the central dynamic here is that the currency of the Republican Party at this point in time is attention and anger, right? And the reason that you have this segment of the caucus that doesn't want to pass these bills is because they recognize that they can derive more value from their audience by being obstructionist and by saying, no, we shouldn't fund the government and, all this money's wasteful and yada, yada, yada. The Democratic Party is more, I would say, overwhelmingly, if not entirely, dedicated to the idea the government should actually do stuff. So they step in to do it, not because they're trying to save Mike Johnson or save Donald Trump, obviously, but because they think the government needs to be funded and the government needs to do things. The Republican Party, fundamentally, there are more than a dozen people in the House Republican caucus who just don't believe that. They believe that it's more important to be on Fox News and Newsmax and OAN and all these channels and be able to be the one saying, I don't think the government should spend your money, yada, yada, yada. And they just aren't committed to the government in the same way. And so that's how we end up in these situations.
Well, right. So if it comes down to basic sort of functionality, Democrats may end up saving the day. But Tim, to your point, when Donald Trump, who has said over and over again he intends to renew his tax cuts, which disproportionately benefit the ultra wealthy, when it comes time to pass that, that's not going to be done with Democratic help. And I guess I wonder, given the narrower majorities, how much in peril do you think Trump's legislative agenda is in reality?
I think it really is. And this isn't just kind of hopium for resistance opposers to Trump. It's just an analysis of what's happening. I spent last week in Phoenix for that Turning Point USA conference. It was a year-end gathering of all the big MAGA luminaries, if you want to call them that. And look, these folks just don't agree on anything. To Philip's point, like what animates them is blocking things, is stopping foes, is opposing the Democrats, is opposing the globalists, And so the idea that they're all going to unify when you need every single Republican vote, maybe you can give up one or two to pass the Trump tax cuts. Look, again, maybe they'll give Trump one thing at the beginning because they want to, not totally derail his presidency right out of the jump. Like Republicans might be chaotic and self-sabotaging, but maybe they're not quite that self-sabotaging. So maybe they can all row together for one vote. But it's hard to see much more passing after that, especially, again, given the narrow majorities in the House, but then also in the Senate.
Yeah, well, can we talk about the Senate for a minute, Philip? Because we had a brief nod to the Gates report that came out belatedly. I wonder how much you think, given the reality of how, the complicated dynamics in the House, which in some ways may provide cover in the Senate if they want to buck Trump, the failure of Matt Gaetz, the controversy that is swirling around three of his very important picks, including Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, and Kash Patel, and the fact that Trump's a lame duck. I mean, he's not, in theory, according to the Constitution, he's not going to be president again. And I wonder if that gives some cover to Republicans who don't actually want to walk the plank on some of the nonsense that Trump has put out in the ether.
Yeah, I think it's very likely. I mean, one of the things we've talked about ever since Trump won the election is, there's a lot of pressure on Democrats. They're going to have to sort of pick their fights in these nomination battles. But I've said, and I think on your show before, I've said, the Republicans are in the same boat. They need to decide how much of their credibility they're willing to lend to these Trump nominees. And there are certain Republicans who are from states that aren't as hard red as a lot of the states are, or who may be eyeballing, the reelection in the future, who may be willing to be retire after this, right? Who are not going to be willing to have their legacy be putting RFK Jr. in charge of vaccines in the United States, right? Like, there's going to be a lot of pressure on the Senate, which has historically and even recently, despite, all of the majorities that we fairly levy against the Congress, there have been a lot of Republican senators recently who have made it harder for the Republican Party to do what it would ideally like to do and for Trump to do what he would like to do. And I think that's going to continue. I think that these fights are going to impose a cost on Republicans as well as Democrats. And I'm not sure that all the Republican senators are going to be willing to pay those costs. And that's just talking about the nomination fights, much less the legislative fights down the road.
Tim, do you, I'm not going to ask you to make 100% positive predictions. That's not.
He won't. He's a chicken.
It's not that kind of show. No, I applaud Philip's confidence. But in terms of Trump's, the picks he's announced that are the most controversial, whether it's Kennedy, Gabbard, Patel, or Hegseth, do you think all four make it in? Do you think none of them make it in? Do you have a thought on where they stand at this hour?
Look, I would suspect that they will all make it just because, look, if you just do the math, the Republicans can afford to lose three votes, right? So you have Murkowski and Collins, so people keep saying are the two, though you haven't made a lot of money betting on Susan Collins to show courage in the past. Right. So I think that's a little iffy, and some people think McConnell seems ready to do thumbs down on a few things because he's on his way out. But then who? I mentioned that TPUSA thing last week. I got to talk to Matt Gaetz briefly. He told me that John Curtis, the new senator from Utah, was adamant with him in private that he was not going to vote for him and would never vote for him. So who knows? Maybe this guy, John Curtis, will show some motivation.
I think we lost Tim Miller, but he is going to come back because we're not letting him go. That's all I'm saying. We're going to take a quick break. Oh, there he is. See, there he is. So, Tim, just hold that thought because we need you more. We need you for another segment because coming up, the president-elect has spent Christmas fantasizing about taking control of Greenland and Panama and Canada. Yes, really, that's what he was doing. While you were roasting chestnuts. That's what he was doing. We're going to discuss the looming imperialism of a second Trump administration. But first, a fight has broken out between MAGA and Doge, and it is not pretty. That's next.
This holiday season, add a little McCormick magic. A sprinkle of cinnamon, a splash of vanilla, a pour of gravy, a dash of pepper. So people can't wait for this. Because there's no better feeling than when all you do to create something special turns into more moments that everyone will remember. Making the holidays memorable for over 135 years. McCormick.
First and foremost, we always want to be consumer-centric. There's nothing worse than having a piece of advertising or content delivered to you that just feels inauthentic, that you can tell immediately that it wasn't something that was created with the consumer in mind. Whether that's listening through social media, whether it's staying on top of all the pop culture trends and everything that's going on, we really want to react in real time because there's no better time to connect with somebody than something they're already thinking about at that moment. And I think that's key to staying relevant with a consumer base where the amount of content being pushed out every single day is astonishing. I love live events because there's something about being physically present and the energy that comes from being with so many different people all experiencing the same thing at the same time. Experiential for us is a massive opportunity that we tap into from a creative standpoint all the time.
MSNBC Premium gives you early access and ad-free listening to Rachel Maddow's chart-topping series, MSNBC Original Podcasts, exclusive bonus content, and all of your favorite MSNBC shows now ad-free. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts.